Today we're going to show you a method that is probably not the most logical method you'll ever see, but the fact is that it works, and it's been working for a long, long time. It's by Joe Alberti. Joe Alberti, probably one of the most prolific system writers of all time. Him and his friend Ed Hatch actually made probably in the neighborhood, again, this is back in the 50s, 60s, 70s neighborhood, of $50,000, $60,000 a year at the racetrack using their various methods. They were both rather well-to-do and bet a lot. However, we have several of their methods, and one of the most unusual and probably the simplest that we've seen is called the Magic 30 method. This is one that Joe, he relates a story from 1955 when he's at the track, and a young couple in front of them. It's the girl's birthday, and her husband's looking for a winner, and he finds a horse, and he puts $10 on it. So, Joe, overhearing the conversation, he didn't bet the horse, but the horse did come in and pay $44. And Joe thought, well, that was just beginner's luck. It's her birthday, good for her. But then a couple races later, Joe noticed that a horse that paid $18.80 fit the same pattern that the fella had described, would have the $44 horse. So what Joe did, like he did with all his systems, and back then there were no computers, so he had to go through hundreds of racing forms in order to see if there was any logic to this method. And again, while Joe thought this is odd, it doesn't cover a lot of handicapping factors, I can't remember. I did talk to him once, and I think he said he looked at 1,200 and something races, but he came up with a win average of 34% and an average mutual close to $10. So, and what you're basically talking here, and Joe, at first, like I said, he didn't quite understand the logic of it until he really started studying. And then he said, it took me a while to realize there was a logic to this method. The horses you're playing are sharp and well regarded. And he said, what surprises me to this day is how often these horses get off at a price. Now, here are the rules. And again, they're fairly simple. Number one, of course, the horse must have won his last race. So you're betting repeaters. Horse must have won his last race by 1.5 lengths or more. Last race must have been within 30 days. Actually, it would have to be under 30 days after you see the next rule. And now here's the key. And again, it seems a bit strange, but this thing works. The horse's odds in its last race added to the number of days between his last race and today's race must not exceed 30. So in other words, let's say, and again, we're just talking about his last race, days plus the odds. So here's an example. So let's say the odds in his last race were 5-1, and it has been 21 days since he's raced. So you add the 5-1 or the 5 to the 21, you get 26. This horse would qualify on the Magic 30 rules. Another example, odds are 4-1, days since last race, 26, total equals 30. And again, 30 or less, the horse qualifies. And again, it's called the Magic 30 because you can't go over 30 with this total. Example, a horse that doesn't qualify, last race odds 10-1, 23 days since his last race, total 33, so he does not qualify. So basically, all you're doing is, again, making sure, number one, and this is obviously the most important rule, that 1.5 lengths, the horse had to win his last race by 1.5 lengths. So you can go through the past performances really quickly. Just look for horses who won its last race, mark them, and then see if he qualifies on these other rules, where the odds for the last race and his days since the last race don't add up to more than 30. Some other rules, you can play horses shipping in as long as they're not stepping up more than one class level. So again, that doesn't occur that often, but the horses that are shipping in are often stepping up more than one class level. But again, you can play those horses. Also, Joe found you could play up to 3 horses per race, odds permitting. And odds permitting meaning all the horses would have to be like 5-1 or better, and you could play them. You could play the horses. You could Dutch them, or you could just play them flat. We found it works best when there's just one or two horses in the one or two horses that qualify in a race. That's where you're going to get your best overall results. And Joe suggests a separate bankroll should be used for each track you're playing. Also, and he had a rather interesting betting strategy. He bet 5% of his original bankroll. His example here is he had $400, and he bet 5% of that, which would be $20. And in an example here, he said, let's say the first horse hits at $22, you would then have $600 total after you cash your $220. 380 plus 220 equals 600, and then you would your total bankroll would be 600. So, but your next wager would again be 5% or $30. But the key is, if the next horse loses, you do not change your bet. In other words, you don't lower your bet. You continue betting $30 into your winnings top 600. At which point you go back to the 5% rule. So then you went up to 700, it'd be $35. And like he says with this rating, you won't experience long runouts with this method. And it's a type of strategy that will allow you to really collect big when you hit, especially if you are betting the 5% bankroll and you're on a winning streak. So again, this method, if you look at it, looks almost too simple to work, but we found so many of these methods over the course of our studies that have these simple rules. Joe Alberti was really, really good at this. He had a couple complex methods, but Walt Owen was another guy who would write these simple methods, and to this day they work just fine. And the important thing is just sticking with them. So again, you've got these on your screen. You can take a look at what the whole original story that Joe told about the couple, and also you can look at all the rules here. But do take a look at this method. Oh, another thing, this method seems to get more plays at smaller tracks. Smaller tracks meaning, like Parks, Penn National, Pimlico, Laurel, Tampa Bay. Not the grade A tracks, but the grade B tracks and grade C tracks, because you have many, many more horses that come back within a shorter period of time than you do on the bigger circuits. So again, give this thing a try. You're going to really be surprised at how it works. And we'll talk to you next time.